We also have Mike Sampson with us. Mike is the president of Mascoma Valley, and we're glad you could join us.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I'm going to hand the mic over and share it with you a little bit, because I would love for you to tell everybody a little bit more about the amazing $1.9 million award that the co-op recently received to upgrade its infrastructure. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, sure. I'm always delighted to talk about my lunch fund. So this is ARPA money that was awarded to needy projects, and we're very fortunate. And I've got 2 sheets that I'll distribute. Actually, I might as well do it now. If you take one and
Great, thank you.
Only keep 1 copy. And then if somebody else wants to take the other pile. So the short one is a description of the park, and it's basically the numbers regarding the park. The longer one is a pretty picture of the $1.9 million.
Oh, that's you. Okay, I see what he did.
So in the short one, I talk about what the value is to the homeowners of this park. And the average house in the park has an assessed valuation of $48,000 for just the house. It has a public water and sewer system. That's obviously a good chunk of what the park is. When this is done, there'll be a larger chunk, about $2 million larger in terms of equity in the water and sewer system in the park. So if you divide that by 29 units in the park, you can see that the equity has gone up significantly since it requires no payment whatsoever. Okay, so think of it as a homeowner. You've paid $47,000. I have a new unit. I moved in last year, and my new unit was $110,000 because of inflation. So I have 110. Some people have got 35. Some people have got 60. That's what they have for a home value. Then they pay rent of $400 a month. So over and above that, what are they getting back? Well, obviously they're getting back a place to live. They're getting water and sewer, and they're building up equity. So just in the equity fund of the park, I think they got something like $4,000 or $5,000 equity in cash in the park. Then they have the value of the lot. The value of the lot is about $35,000 if you take the assessed valuation by the units. So they got that equity, but that's offset by a mortgage. But net is still another $5,000 or $10,000.
Can I add something here?
Sure.
Right, and I love that Mike is talking about the land, because when a resident-owned community becomes a cooperative, the cooperative cooperatively owns the property in a resident-owned community. Individuals own their homes in the community, and so that makes the co-op a terrific recipient for this kind of grant award. What's it going to mean for the residents in the community to have this project done, Mike?
Security. That's the biggest answer. This park's water and sewer system were built originally in 1984. Another tranche of it was done in 1989, and another tranche that was somewhere around 1990-something. So the system has been around for 40 years.
How is the water quality and wastewater quality?
Well, the water quality is fine. The wastewater is not so fine.
Yeah.
So Donna's backyard here is a receptacle of a good chunk of the wastewater in the park.
Oh, excuse me.
And
it's really good for 12-foot sunflowers.
and frankly, it would have been very difficult for a park with 29 residents with an average home value of $48,000 to come up with $2 million.
Absolutely.
So this funding is a godsend. It's good for the community. I mean, housing is at a premium everywhere, there's no question. My last house in this town, I've lived here for over a decade.
Oops,
but
hold
my
on.
last house here, I bought for $110 12 years ago and sold it for almost $300,000 last year. Well, that means on the other side, if you're trying to buy a home, how do you buy it? You know, especially if you're a low to moderate income or on fixed income. Where do you get it? So the investment for most people in this park is not outrageous. There's a couple of us that have relatively new homes, but it's an easy investment. It's much better than a traditional manufactured housing park that's for profit, because there's absolutely no control as a tenant.
Can you speak a little bit more about the residents' control at Mascoma Valley?
Sure. This is the second co-op park I've lived in my life. I lived in the last one for 3 years before I came to this town. Then I was in a traditional house, and then I went back to the park. The only place I would get manufactured housing is either on my own property or in a co-op park, because of the degree of control that the owners can have. They have the potential. If they don't come to meetings, they don't get involved, then their potential is seriously diminished. Because there could be a lunatic like me in charge, and then we would have problems. So we don't want that. But the advantage is that the members themselves have the authority. And I've seen it happen in 2 different parks. There was a park that I left that was working on trying to put in solar energy that would have pretty much heated all of their homes for the next 25 years. Other than the amortized cost to begin with, it still would have meant 15 years of free power for heat. So that's the type of thing that people can do. There's a park down the road that has solar units in it. But it's not unusual for a park to be proactive. It is also not unusual for parks to just be a lump. But the best way to do it is to be active in the park. So I'm encouraging people to do it. It takes a lot of effort to encourage people to do it. So I'm thinking about grabbing somebody's Doberman and getting them that way. But it's the right thing to do.
And residents here happy with their decision to become a resident-owned community?
I think most of them are. I'm not certain. Is there anybody that is really annoyed with this whole idea?
There's a few people who aren't happy. They were here before. My situation is so much different. If you don't,
We have a couple. We've got a couple minutes. Yes.
The situation is really different. They decided on June 29th that they were going to do, be a co-op. I found this place and closed on it July 20th. Wasn't told it was a co-op. So
Surprise.
Surprise.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know. But fortunately for me, on a fixed income, the previous owner financed it for me. So luckily, and I've already paid it off. It took me 4 years, that's it. So luckily for me, I'm happy. I love living here.
Can I ask you a question? So your home is paid off. What is the lot rent in the community?
Right now we're at $410, and we're not really speaking of raising unless there's something very difficult that we need to repair or something like that.
And so as a community, you decide on the improvements you're going to make, on the upgrades you're going to do, and then as a community, you collectively decide whether there's going to be a rent increase to cover expenses and costs. Is that how it works?
It is. We do. We pretty much rule ourselves, and it's great. You want to say something?
Shirley, can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
What's the, I'm curious because I work with USDA Rural Development and we do a lot of wastewater, water funding, and we do a lot of housing work. Where was the funding that came through your $1.9 million grant?
From the federal government. And DES.
What part?
New Hampshire DES. Yeah, New Hampshire DES.
For the water and sewage,
Yeah.
DES.
Yeah.
And it's the revolving loan fund that's funneling
State
ARPA
revolving
money
loan.
through
Correct.
it.
Yes.
And I think we're going to be talking a little bit more about this. And Matt Stanley is also on the bus. He's our projects person at Rock NH. But the state of New Hampshire was designated $150 million in ARPA funds, and they decided to create a disadvantaged communities program and primarily funnel about $31 million into improvements in resident-owned communities. So we have 31 communities that are going to be recipients of upgraded infrastructure, water lines, distribution lines, wastewater programs. And Mascoma Valley did the hard work to be one of those communities.
That's an understatement.
There's a lot to
There was
it.
a lot to it, and I spent months on that application. It was really, really tough because previous administrations had
Okay.
done things wrong.
Yep.
So it was tough. Yeah. about
5 minutes? Okay. Are there other questions? Oh, there's one in the back.
David.
You said you were surprised to learn that this had become a rock between the time that you closed or just before you closed. How did it change? Did it change whether you were happy to be here? Did it change the cost? Did it change the process?
It made no difference to me because at that time I was essentially homeless, but I was living with my son who didn't want me there. So I would have come anyways because the price was right and I could afford to live here on my disability income. I got outpriced down south. So that's why I'm here.
Like
And
no change in cost, no change in process.
no, I would have done it anyway.
Thanks for that question. Others? Any other question for Donna or Mike? I think we're going to be probably hitting the road here. I want to thank you both
Where
for
else you going?
we're heading down the road visiting other rocks. Yeah, and we were very excited about highlighting Mascoma Valley.
Just one other quick comment. In one of my past lives, I was town administrator, town manager. So the last park I lived in, I was so enamored with rock and the whole program, and I did a fair amount of research into it. So when I came to Canaan, I was the town administrator in Canaan. We have welfare cases in Canaan. We have tax cases in Canaan where people are about to lose their properties. So 14 years ago, we took the step of trying to get land donated by family members that could take manufactured housing. And when the town fronted the cost of the pads, the installation of the homes, bought used homes on the market, restored them, put in well and septic. And the typical unit that we put in, it's the same concept as here, except instead of a park, it's a single player. But the big thing is, the same thing in this type of a park is the buy-in by the owners. They've got skin in the game. So in this case, every one that we did worked successfully to set up that type of a residence. And a typical one ran around 20 grand. And it always had a mortgage on it. And if the person left, sold the property, or died, in the case of one person, then we sold off the property with the heirs and took back our money. But we did it as no interest either. And it worked. And it worked very well. So it's just an outgrowth. And I know back then we were in discussions with Rock and Charitable Foundation about how to do this on owner-occupied manufactured housing. So I don't know if anything's happened since then, but the model is good for a number of different things. It's not just for co-op parks. It's for any type of, it's basically subsidized housing without having any federal subsidies. It's just community-based.
Thank you for that.
Long wait on the app. I'd like to ask that USDA lady something.
Oh, okay.
Not on the microphone.
Oh, okay.
Mike, you read from the White River office. You used to work with my son, David. David Dumay. Sound familiar? Then David Dubois. I'm just curious if he worked with him. He's got away, but he works with me today now.
Thank you, Donna and Mike, for joining us today.